good evening and welcome. Tonight we'll be going over the history and geography of Aceh in Indonesia. Now, the map I have of Aceh is in a really strange spot in my atlas, so the camera angle is a little strange and off, more so than usual. So my apologies for that. Also because of how I had to position my camera, it's going to be a little extra wobbly because of my wobbly desk, so apologies for the additional wobbles. But let's move on to Aceh. Aceh is situated up in the tip of the island of Sumatra. You can see this big island of Sumatra, and Aceh is up here. Now, there wasn't a lot of information about the geography of Aceh from what I could find. Pretty much all that I could see was that it had lots of little tiny islands up here. It has tons and tons of mountains all throughout the interior, all very thickly forested, very rainforesty kind of jungle. And it's ringed by beautiful beaches, and that was pretty much all I could find. The capital up here is Banda Aceh, right there. And that was basically all of the info I could find online, so I just kind of have to make my own. But like I said, very thickly forested and very mountainous. You can see this beautiful national park here, which we're going to explore a little bit on my tablet on Google Earth after I go over history. Aceh, however, has a very long and interesting history, and I have compressed it down as best I can. So let's just get into that, because that's the most interesting thing. The earliest evidence of people living in this area would have been living here. So the first peoples would have lived in the area now known as Aceh about 10,000 BCE. Very long time. Of course, there's lots of evidence of early mammal throughout the Malaysia and Indonesia archipelagos. But one of the biggest, earliest kingdoms in this area would have been the Lombri Kingdom. The Lombri Kingdom was sort of a combination Hindu and Buddhist kingdom. Primarily Hindu, but as Buddhism became more and more popular throughout Eastern Asia, it started to incorporate more and more Buddhist elements into the kingdom. But that rose and fell. By the 13th century, Islam was introduced through the various Islamic traders coming through the Indian Ocean and down from China, and it really picked up in this corner of what's now Indonesia, and really blossomed. The people really took to it. And in 1511, the Sultanate of Aceh was established. This is very important to its history, and Aceh is predominantly Islamic today. You'll see it's like integral to its history. So the Sultanate became very rich off of trading. It's in a very good spot where it's near the Indian Ocean. You can reach India, you can sail over to Africa, up to the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. There's lots of easy transports, and it has access to all of, the spice islands as they were known during colonial times. The biggest spice that was grown and produced and shipped out of Aceh was black pepper. So you can imagine the Sultanate got very rich and wealthy and very powerful and very influential, to the point where the Dutch couldn't really tap into the market here in Aceh. They had Malacca and their other ports throughout what's now the Indonesian archipelago over here. They had a bunch, but they cooperated with Aceh. Aceh cooperated with them, but it was never like a full-on colony of the Dutch. The Dutch very much wanted in on that spice and trading action, right? In the Napoleonic eras, the British swooped in and claimed all of the Dutch territories, just, holding on to them while Napoleon went and did his thing. The British handed them back to the Dutch after the Napoleonic Wars, but let them know, you have to be careful with Aceh. We promised them that they would be an autonomous territory. It would be best if you kept that bargain because these guys are going to come after you if you come after them. And the Dutch said, yeah, sure, we know. But the Dutch got a little greedy, and they also blamed Aceh for a lot of pirate attacks on their ships. So the Dutch declared war on Aceh beginning in 1873, and that sparked the Aceh War. The Aceh War was, that's hard to say. The Aceh War was waged until 1913. At the start of the war, the Acehnese really kind of whooped the Dutch pretty good. The Dutch were not prepared for how intensely these people were ready to fight, but as the Dutch built up more and more strength in the early 1900s, it was just kind of agreed upon that, okay, we're going to end the fighting. You guys can have influence in our government, but we are Aceh, we are our own thing. And that was kind of the agreement. And that lasted until 1942, when the Japanese swept through the South Pacific and began invading. The Acehnese saw this as an opportunity to be like, we're going to kick out the Dutch. And that they certainly rose up and revolted and did their best to kick them out. The Japanese came in and invaded and did their thing. And the Acehnese welcomed the Japanese at first because they were going to liberate them from the Dutch, until they realized that the Japanese were far worse than the Dutch in a multitude of ways. So once the Acehnese were able to, they rose up and fought back against the Japanese in May 1945. A good time to do so because the Japanese military was very, very weakened by that point. And of course, the Japanese would withdraw not long after that. And Aceh was finally left on its own, right? A bit of civil war broke out between the various groups that had rose to power during Japanese occupation, claiming that they were like the true government of Aceh. They started to fight it out, but soon they had bigger fish to fry when in 1950 the new nation of Indonesia, freshly independent, made Aceh part of the North Sumatra, province. You can see North Sumatra's down here. They said this is all North Sumatra. And Aceh was like, we are not part of your agenda. We are our own thing. All they wanted was to have their own thing for so long. They finally had it. So then the Acehnese rebellion sparked up at this time, and they fought back against the Indonesians for control of this area. It was very hot and cold, off and on. It sparked up really bad during the 1970s. In 1976, Aceh would declare its independence, and a rebel group known as GAM really became the dominant rebellion organization in Aceh, and they were very, very vicious and ready to defend their land. It was also during this time that natural gas was discovered offshore, and I believe it was an American company that began to extract it and mine it, and they really took advantage of the instability in Aceh, hiring people and basically exploiting the workforce here for their personal gain. You can imagine the Acehnese rebels were not pleased about that, so that kind of added on to the extreme unrest in the area. It was starting to rise up again really bad in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Like I said, it kind of, from what I can tell in history, it kind of rose and fell in waves in terms of how bad the fighting and the violence was in Aceh. So it was getting to be really bad in the early 2000s. And then on December 26th, 2004, a 9.2 earthquake struck not far from the coast of Aceh, just over here in the Indian Ocean. And that created a devastating tsunami that swept pretty much over the entirety of the Aceh coastal regions, all over the islands here, all over here. Banda Aceh was destroyed. The very few buildings remained from the tsunami. Many coastal villages were simply wiped off the map. The loss of life was massive. The loss of homes was even more massive, and it was just a very horrific, destructive time, not just in Aceh, but throughout many different areas of the Indian Ocean. It was just, Aceh was probably hit the hardest since the earthquake epicenter was not far from Aceh. It's the closest land to the epicenter of the earthquake. So in 2005, peace was agreed upon. It was kind of viewed that, like, look, our land has been destroyed by a natural disaster. It's not really worth fighting anymore. We need to focus on rebuilding. And I also read that there was kind of an air of, like, this was a punishment from God. We should be more religious and devout and not worry about fighting. We should just get along, which is, you know, kind of a depressing kind of thought, isn't it? But it led to peace in Aceh, and they signed an agreement with the Indonesian government that they would officially become an autonomous region within Indonesia. So they are finally, for the most part, their own thing. Thankfully, Aceh has been entirely rebuilt thanks to lots of aid from the Indonesian government and charity works and kind donations from all over the world. It kind of reminds me it's happening in Turkey and Syria right now, how people are all coming together to help out from that earthquake. It was very similar to what happened in Aceh. Everything is completely rebuilt. Banda Aceh's even more beautiful city than it was before. I'm going to show you on the tablet a cool museum that commemorates the tsunami and memorializes the victims of that event. When you look up Aceh nowadays, especially on YouTube and kind of any kind of news organizations, a lot of stuff about Sharia law pops up. So like I said, people were starting to think that they should become more pious, more devout to their religions, to their religion, hello, Islam. And Sharia law was implemented once Aceh had autonomy, because now they could make their own rules and laws. And you see lots of stories about people, particularly women, being caned in the street for whatever minor, infraction of the law. It's pretty intense. There are places in the world where the law is far more strict, but it's something that's like, it is what it is. That's the culture and the government of Aceh. Sorry for those big wobbles. I am so sorry. I can't get a better angle for this, but that is pretty much where we are in the history of Aceh today. Why don't I pull out my tablet and show you the beautiful pictures? Now, one thing about Google Earth in this area is that everything on this map is in Indonesian, I assume. Bahasa Indonesia, maybe? I'm not sure. But, so I've had to pick and choose and try to find places just by, like, how they sound in Indonesian. So first you can see lots of the major islands over here. There's a lot of little cool tiny ones up here. Let's take a look at a slideshow here. Let's see if this is any good. Oh, very cool. It is an absolutely gorgeous place in the world. So many waterfalls and rivers throughout the mountains. Beautiful coasts, and it's just like a very beautiful spot in the world. Lots of farming inland in the valleys there, predominantly rice farming. Let's take a look at Banda Aceh. So the most famous site in Banda Aceh is the Baitur Rahman Grand Mosque, which my channel members know. I'm doing a series called Whispered Wikipedia, where I whisper Wikipedia articles, and the Wikipedia article that I'm doing for Aceh is going to be about this mosque. So if you want to hear me explain more about this mosque in a very slow whisper, you can do that on my memberships. But it is a gorgeous building here. Isn't that lovely? It was built by the Dutch because they accidentally set the original mosque on fire during the Aceh War. So in a gesture of goodwill, they rebuilt it. People were kind of bitter about it, but it's a gorgeous building. So they did an amazing job. People are like, oh, infidels built this mosque, we don't want to pray in it. But I mean, it's absolutely stunning. I love the black domes. I think it's such a nice touch against all of the white in this mosque. All the little details and everything. It's like the pride and joy of Aceh, and it was one of the buildings to survive the tsunami. It was very badly damaged, but it did survive, so it was really kind of another point of pride for the Acehnese after that destruction. Speaking of, let's check out the museum. Here it is, Museum Tsunami Aceh. It has a gorgeous kind of natural curvy design you can see here. It is an absolutely beautifully designed building. And there's lots of little models here, including a model of the museum. So here's a little model of what Banda Aceh looked like after the tsunami. So here's the mosque. And you can see very heavily damaged, but it was still standing. A police helicopter after the destruction. Look at this, looks like some kind of barge here, and there's the size of the wave. Lots of interesting little scale models here. Terrifying, right? And yeah, a little amphitheater outside. These are interesting. Some Qurans that survived, the tsunami, barely, but that's a nice picture. Preserving these beautiful books. An overshot. That's not the word. A bird's eye view, let's say that, of Banda Aceh after the tsunami. You can see just how widespread the destruction was, right? After tsunami. And some more Qurans that they pulled out of the wreckage. Very interesting museum. But as you can see, Banda Aceh is thriving and very beautiful and a big old bustling city. So let me show you some other sites that I found around Aceh. Put that down. There are gorgeous, gorgeous beaches. Let me just pick a random one over here. See all like the pretty coral? I assume that's coral. Let's look at this. I assume this is a beach. Ooh, yeah. This might take a minute to load the pictures because I did not click on this before. Beautiful ocean, but ooh, and yummy food. But this isn't kind of the beach vibe I was going for. It's a little too rocky. Let's find a gorgeous beach along here. Here we go. Yes, this is what I want. A big beach where the whole family comes out to play in the water and into the sand. It looks like an old shipwreck there. Gorgeous views, and drink your coffee and catch some tadpoles. Enjoy the lovely, lovely tropical weather. There's a cat. And yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous beaches all around the area. They're all over the place. Let's go into the interior here, and I'm going to put the 3D on so you can really see just how mountainous this place is. Okay, you can't really tell from up here. But let me see. Here we go. Here's the Big Mountains. Here's where it gets pretty big and wild. Let me... Come on. Come on. Boom. Big, big mountains up here. And there's like this gorgeous lake over here. Where like, I feel like every place has like a lake that when people say, oh, we're gonna go to the lake, I think this is the lake. Let's pick one of these random ones. This one looks interesting. And you can see that lots of camping happens here, fishing, enjoying the beautiful lakeside. Look at that. So gorgeous. Oh, beautiful sunset. And yeah, it's a big recreation spot, mostly for camping and boating and all those wonderful lake activities, right? Let's head over to the big mountains over here. Let me zoom out so we can get there a little bit faster. We're going to go to Mount, and I couldn't find a good pronunciation of this, Mount Leuser, I assume, but as you can see, big mountainy peaks over here. Thick, thick forest. Look at the cloud cover there in this picture. And what I really want to show you is, for me, the most important part of the Sumatran jungle, other than the beautiful life there, the gorgeous trees and views and hiking, is the orangutans live here. Only 2 places in the world is home to wild orangutans. It's Sumatra and Borneo, not far away. So you can come to this park and see these sweet old men of the forest in the wild, in their natural habitat. Aren't they the sweetest? Gorgeous big old national park. There's a cool picture of this one where you can just see orangutans just living their best lives out here in the wild. So, that's like a dream for me. I would absolutely love to do that. But you know, I've looked all over this area and it's just a lot of mountains, a lot of beaches, and just a lot of beauty in general. It is such a lovely place. I just would tap on random places and it would just be absolutely gorgeous. Thick, oh, look at that. Beautiful, thick rainforest. Oh, that is absolutely gorgeous, right? Oh, that's beautiful. So, like, beauty lives here, pretty much. In many places throughout Indonesia, but thankfully, thankfully Aceh is a much safer place to visit and explore, and my goodness, why are you zooming in all the time? And just enjoy. It kind of has that reputation of being like the violent Sharia law place, but the violence is over, you know. It's now a very thriving, lovely place to visit and explore. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for watching. Speaking of islands, we are heading to the Bahamas next. So if you would like to see that and make sure you don't miss it, please consider subscribing. And I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational, and I hope that you have a very good night. Good night.